Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. I hope you're doing well. I made a video a few days ago about Joshua saying that, we shouldn't get carried away with this victory over Ngannou. Yes, it was very spectacular. Yes, it was picturesque, highlight reel stuff. But ultimately, it was against a man with a 0-1 record in the professional game. Who, despite his physical presence and his physical strength, had nowhere near the skills necessary to take on an elite heavyweight, regardless of how bad Fury was against him. Not just the Ngannou fight, but if you look at Fury's string of fights since the two Usyk losses, his activity is excellent. I think his what he's doing with Ben Davison is clearly paying dividends. But we shouldn't get carried away because the quality of the opposition, none of them have been top 10 heavyweights. He looked, against Jermaine Franklin, he looked a bit shaky. Helenius, okay, late replacement and everything, but he was getting jabbed badly in the opening rounds. He had bloodied nose and a bloodied mouth, and then after that, it was Wallin, which was a very good performance overall. I think at that point, the knockout of Helenius, I said this in the previous video, but the knockout of Helenius was almost like a corner turned for Joshua because he seemed to sort of get a lot of confidence back. The fact that he'd knocked this guy flat, who, after all, is, a big fella. I mean, Helenius has been stopped before, but he does hit very hard. And he's also... he also has a very good jab. And I think Joshua in the past has been a bit vulnerable to fighters that do jab well. Pulev and Povetkin are two guys who gave him problems early on. And a lot of that was from the jab. Now, against Wallin, Joshua showed, a great deal of, I suppose, mental control. He seemed a lot quieter. He seemed a lot more serene. He seemed a lot more focused. He didn't seem to second guess himself. And you have to give Ben Davison credit for that. I think Davison and Joshua are a very good fit. Joshua is a very sort of thoughtful, desperate to learn kind of character, someone who overthinks, someone who second guesses, maybe even third guesses what he's about to do, what he is doing. And Davison is somebody who is, again, quite a cerebral dissector of styles. He comes out. He's a great strategist. He gives Joshua what Joshua seems to want, which is consistent and very intricate and very solid advice as to what he needs to do. So there's no coming back to the corner and thinking, what's this guy going to tell me? What do I need to know? It's there waiting for him. And that seems to suit Joshua, I think. Now, the question is, because he's faced, what do you call them? C+ level fighters, maybe a B- if you're talking Wallin, or a B even. Don't forget, of course, he had fought Wallin in the amateurs and they'd sparred together. So there wasn't it's not like Wallin was an unknown commodity, but he did a good job. Don't get me wrong. I'm not slagging Joshua off at all. He did a good job. But we need to see him in with a top tenner, with a guy who is a genuine threat. And we need to see what Joshua does with someone like that. And the person that I would love to see him in with next, regardless of the politics, regardless of whether it's feasible or not, the person I would like to see Joshua in with is Filip Hrgovic. I think Joshua is perfectly capable of beating Filip Hrgovic, who is a good fighter, but in my opinion has been somewhat overrated. I've always felt that about Hrgovic. I used to feel, okay, the jury's still out. We'll see how he does against, better guys. He had that win against Zhang, which some people disputed. I thought maybe he edged it. Could have gone either way. But I always felt the jury's out. And more recently, I felt it's just not showing it. He's just not showing the goods. He doesn't suggest, although he's good at everything and he's solid, and he's got decent power. He's got good skills. Nothing stands out. I mean, there's a lot to be said for being very good at everything, even if you're not great at anything. But at the same time, when it comes to judging him right at the very top with the absolute elites, I don't really see a great deal there, to be honest with you. I don't see him making that final jump up to the summit. And I think he is beatable, very beatable, not just by Joshua, but by a couple of others. Now, I think if Joshua could beat Hrgovic, and there is talk of them fighting for a vacant IBF title after the first Usyk-Fury fight, they have a 2-fight deal, but the IBF will demand a mandatory and probably strip the winner, in which case Joshua and Hrgovic could fight for the vacant belt. But if they do fight, on the evidence of what I've seen, and this is purely a mental and emotional and psychological change for Joshua, I think he can beat Hrgovic. And I would make him a sort of 60-40 favourite, 55-45 maybe. Don't get me wrong, Hrgovic is perfectly capable of beating Joshua as well. I'm not saying it will be one-way traffic at all. But I think he's the guy who if AJ beats him, he can then say, well, I really am back. I really have earned a shot at the title again. Because don't forget, there's another fighter, Joseph Parker, who's also come back from adversity. He's come back from actually a bad knockout loss. And he's had 5 fights, and the last 2 have been victories over Zhilei Zhang and Deontay Wilder. So you could say that, in a sense, in recent form, Parker has leapfrogged Joshua. I rate both Parker and Joshua highly, as certainly in terms of attitude, because they both have excellent resumes. They've both fought a lot of very, very good men. They haven't won all the fights, but they've always been competitive, and they've always they've never ducked anyone. They're proper fighting men. They're doing what heavyweight contenders or former champions are supposed to do, taking on anyone, not ducking anyone. So you could say Parker is ahead of Joshua in the stakes, but I think if Joshua was to get rid of Hrgovic, he could make a strong argument. Okay, you beat Zhilei Zhang and Deontay Wilder, but they're both old, and yeah, they're good wins, but, I've just beaten Hrgovic, who everyone was saying was, one of the heir apparents. And I think the stars would gel well for Joshua. I think Joshua, because not just the mental side of it, but I like the fact he's jabbing a lot more. He seems to be picking his punches better, choosing the right punches for the right opportunities. His ring IQ seems to be possibly improved, but then I think a lot of that comes from feeling more relaxed in the ring, more focused. He seems to have arrived at a point where he's no longer in that sort of mental limbo, that no man's land that he seemed to be in after the second Usyk fight, where he had the meltdown in the ring, and there was that awful IFL interview where he was, rambling about gangsterism and contradicting himself, and he just seemed like a bag of contradictions and nerves. That seems to have gone now. He seems far more sort of zen, and I like that. Whereas Hrgovic at times has looked possibly disinterested, maybe he's got other things on his mind. I know his father passed away a few years ago, and that hit him hard. And I just feel that if I could wave a magic wand for the next fight, I would say Hrgovic is the man for Joshua, and that fight may happen for the vacant IBF belt. I hope so. I want them two to fight before their careers are over, because I think that would be a very, very intriguing contest. Anyway, what do you think? Let me know. Who do you think Joshua should fight next, and why? All right. And also, regarding Hrgovic, do you think Joshua beats him, or do you think Hrgovic wins? I mean, you tell me. You give me your opinions. And as always, thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new, and also hit the like button. Much appreciated. Thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to reading your comments, and bye for now.